the Hebrew and the Arabic, it's fundamentally the entire framework is bilingual. English is taught as a second language, as a foreign language at the same, I think it's in third grade. It's whatever's standard in Israel is when we start to do it. Our kids are doing well. I just heard the results of one of the national exams like yesterday that came out, and basically our kids are doing far better than average on the English, in part because I think you've got you're already developing that cognitive capacity for foreign language and for working in a foreign language and coping in a foreign language, and it's a natural thing once you've started to do that to just add languages. Basically, people start off saying we believe in this idea, we don't know how to make it work. We got to figure it all out. So everything from the bilingual stuff to creating a shared calendar to creating all the additional. These are government schools. They're public schools. The core funding comes from the government. The core curriculum comes from the government. Supervision comes from the government. We then add, as parents, through parents' fees and through the organization, right, through philanthropy, we're then adding everything that it takes to have a co-teaching model, to have the multicultural curriculum, to have all the supplementary stuff so that you're getting all the perspectives. So you get Eastern music and Western music, et cetera. Across our 5 schools now, we have 1,080 kids. Wow. And our the way we calculated that is that you're looking at a minimum of like 3 other family members who are in each household. And that impact is then going towards, plus there's 2 other schools that are bilingual integrated schools. There's Hagar in Beersheba, and there's the Neve Shalom school. So you're looking at a network now of 7 bilingual integrated schools, and therefore you're looking at a minimum of 5,000 adults, more really, who are, in households that are a part of these family structures and being impacted by it. And now we're starting to work at the adult community level. So I came in at a time where we were saying, okay, well, we've created and figured out in the day-to-day, this framework that's a day-to-day interaction between Jews and Arabs. Not just, you look at hospitals, you can say, well, that's day-to-day, and there's great integration. That's true. But there, it's purely focused on a very humanitarian function. Mm-hmm. Here, we're grappling with what does it mean to be Jews and Arabs. We're also teaching science and math as science and math and so forth and so on, but we're also looking at the fundamental issues of history and identity and religion and culture and community, and talking about it and learning about each other's backgrounds and perspectives. There's no compulsion here to find agreement, but it's giving the space for a full look at who we are and who you are, and bringing those things together, and to talk about things also when they get tough, also when we're in sort of times of conflict. Each of our schools reflects the local population. So for example, here we've got obviously Jews, Arab Muslims, and Arab Christians. In the Kalkara school, we're mostly Muslims. In the Haifa and Yafa, you've got a mix. So what does that mean in terms of your calendar at a school like this? It means you're doing everyone's holidays. It means you're figuring out how to celebrate and learn about and celebrate and take the days off for all of those holidays. Don't worry, we have the same number of days of school that everyone else does. We just juggle it differently. So that's all well and nice when you're talking about celebratory holidays. What happens when you get to the national days? What happens when you get to Independence Day, and to Memorial Day, right? Which are such a fundamental part of the Jewish-Israeli narrative, right? And experience, and a huge part of how we connect to Israel. So obviously that's a complicated day in a school like this, where for the Arab population, the foundation of the state of Israel is considered for them a catastrophe. They lost, and they lost their homes, and they became refugees. So when you're a school like this, that issue of how people view what happened here, it's around us. It's everywhere. Be it for the 20% of Arab citizens, be it the Palestinian issue, be it the way everyone's looking at what's going on here. You can like it, you can not like it, but that's how the two sides are seen, right? So how do we as a school try to look at that? So we're open about it, and we bring that in, and we bring in both perspectives. And on Independence Day, on Memorial Day, for example, there's a standard sort of ceremony that we do for that's mourning the loss of the soldiers and the brothers and the sons and the uncles, fathers who died in the wars in order to create a state of Israel. It's not compulsory, it's open, it's not compulsory for the Arab kids to come to it. They can go to a parallel session, it's learning and talking and thinking about this from their perspective. But it's not enough to just say, okay, what are you each doing, that we give space for each of those different perspectives. It's also a question of what do we do in the future? And how do we bring kids together? So we then have a ceremony that brings the kids together in a more celebratory, future-oriented sort of ceremony. Nice. these are signs that they did in last year's ceremony. There's a few spots where we have them, and they're expressions of what we believe in for today and forward. So it's preferred a path of peace than a path of war. Dialogue is the path of life. We need a life that is shared and equal. So these are, part of what we're doing here. This is a community-based conflict, right? And so part of it is how do you create, in essence, a shared community that brings people together from these different backgrounds and makes it viable to do stuff also in a framework.
So did the parents work together to figure these things out?
Yeah. So for all of this stuff, first of all, parents are the ones who really founded these schools. At our new schools in Jaffa and in Haifa, we began to work at the community level, and it was the parents who said, and the adults who said, amongst other things, we want a school. We want a school where our kids can be, I don't want to choose that my kid can only have this track or this track, only all Arab or only all Jewish. We want an option that brings them together. And it was the parents who started it. So the parents are fundamentally involved from day one. We've got a parents committee, etc. And we're now beginning to work we're sort of elevating the institutionalization of the community work. So we now have and this is through USAID. The U.S. government gives us a grant to help us launch that, basically, so that we now have at every one of our schools a community organizer who begins to work at the adult level. Obviously, parents are the core, but the idea is that it opens it up. Anybody who's in the community who wants to be part of this, you don't have to be the parent of the kindergartner who's just the right age to start. Anybody can come, anybody can join. The community stuff is beginning to happen, be it sort of the, basketball stuff and running and, excursions and fun stuff, to dialogue groups and religious text study groups and, responding when things here are happening that are problematic. How do you create an option that can strive for? It will not be possible to achieve a perfect, equally meaningful on an equal basis to everybody. But can you strive for something that is representative sufficiently that people can at least not feel excluded by it and maybe also feel included by it? Can we create an Independence Day celebration that anybody could feel comfortable with being at? We have a kid who, for example, in our Kfar Kara school, her, a Jewish girl from the school had invited her Arab girlfriend to come join her in her dance troupe in the town of Katzil, which is a pretty, sort of right-wing town. And the girl decided to join, the Arab girl, and the parents said, is this going to be, it's unusual, right? Here you don't have, it's pretty unusual to have, Jewish and Arab kids mixing in an after-school community center or activities, etc. It just doesn't really happen. So they got a little nervous, but okay, it seemed to be going okay. Well, then comes preparations for the big Independence Day celebration, and the group was supposed to dance at the Independence Day celebration. So for the Jewish parents of the girl said, "Oh my God, is this going to be a really bad experience for the family who's going to come? It can be. It can be. It can be very militant as opposed to just celebratory." They said, "Okay, let's go talk to the organizers, and let's say, look, you're going to have an Arab family here. Can we do it in a way that's going to make them feel sufficiently comfortable, sufficiently welcome, not alienated?" And they did. They managed to do it. Now, at the same time, the Arab family said also, do we let our girl dance? It's one thing to go every day to this activity, but do we let her dance in an Independence Day celebration? And they finally decided, you know what? This has become her little mini community. And so they trusted that it would be done in a way that they wouldn't feel offended by it. And they said, okay, we're going to let her go to this. So you're talking about both sides absorbing the perspective of the other and finding the way to make it work. It's not always comfortable, but it's not necessarily about comfort. It's about figuring out, it's about, to some extent, compromise and figuring out how to make it work and how to create that space for everyone that is sufficiently inclusive, that everyone can be there. And that's something that, that to us is the question of expanded impact, right? That wasn't the school. That was them being a part of a framework outside of the school, taking what they've learned and experienced in the school and taking out. And there's dozens of anecdotes like that where what people are experiencing in here gives them the tools, it gives them the sensitivity and the awareness, and also the feeling of, I'm not alone if I go out there and try to bring this out. And that's really what a lot of this community work is about. It's about both creating the being and the doing of community work at the adult level, You can't just leave this on the shoulders of kids. You can't say, oh, what we adults have failed to do, you kids are going to go to do. And you're going to do it now when you're cute and smiling. And in 40 years, you guys will become our leaders. We have to do it. And so first and foremost, about us doing it today. And it's also about giving that framework to bring this out more broadly. The core stuff all comes from the government. That's under their supervision. But all these additional things, we're creating, we're adding, right? So she's the one who's looking across the board at these issues and sort of supervising them for all of our schools. So her doctoral research had been examining what's happening at our school, at a bilingual integrated school like this, as compared to a sort of more typical homogenous school, all Arab and all Jewish.
Right.
And her findings were, kids start off with an essentialist sense of identity. We are essentially different. By virtue of being in this framework, they understand very clearly difference. We're very open about it. We talk about it. We're looking at it. We're analyzing it. But they understand who I am and who you are, and they respect who I am and who you are. Whereas the kids who are going through a more typical framework, they maintain that essentialist difference, which is ultimately the base for stereotypes, and then in a worst case scenario also discrimination and worse.
So the school is pre-K through what?
This one goes K through 12, pre-K through 12.
Okay.
Our other ones are through elementary school, through middle school. The new ones are starting at pre-K. And we assume that of the 10 to 15 schools that we're going to be establishing over the next decade, that places like Jaffa and Haifa are probably likely to grow up towards high school. It's really a year at a time, the expansion, and seeing, where that. Here also, no one took it as a given that we would go all the way through high school, and we're now actually bursting at the seams. This campus was built because basically the Jerusalem Foundation took it on and said, this is something that the city needs, that the country needs, and so this campus is particularly nice for an Israeli school, but it was built to go through middle school. So as big as it is, we're actually now out of space here. And so part of what we're doing is saying, okay, let's expand this. We're now strong enough as a school, and with the adult community stuff, we're going to bring this out. We've got a community garden here now. We have dreams of, there are such dreams, or the early stages of thinking, how does this become a space that becomes a public space, which literally connects, this walking trail, which is often full of people.
Could be a beautiful park.
Yep. Yeah, so all of that stuff we're now beginning to say, okay, how do we expand that out and make this also, use this space that we're creating and really open it up in every way possible. So say, for a lot of the Arab population, the Holocaust is seen as sort of the excuse for, because of the Holocaust, the Jews came and they took the state and our people lost our stuff, and so they see it as a, very sort of manipulated, right? And she said, by being in this school, now I understand what the Holocaust is about. I understand why that's such a pivotal thing for the Jewish people. She still sees the political manipulation that can happen with it, but she gets it now. And that's what both sides are going through by being a part of this. And even if you come in rationally knowing that, right, rationally being on board with these ideas, etc., you're still confronted. Something specific comes up and you're like, whoa, I didn't think about that aspect of it. And you have to grapple with it. You have to think, okay, how do I... and you have to go through the process of really engaging in the what and the how, and figuring out how to make it work, and how to find your peace with that, with this space that's just shared space, basically.
אתה רב ורסן רב, ואנחנו רק ערב רב. אתה רב ורסן רב, ואנחנו רק ערב רב. עייפנו אנחנו אומרים לך עכשיו, שלום רב לך, שלום לך רב. כן עייפנו אנחנו, רב לנו ממך, שלום לך רב, שלום